and welcome back to another episode of the First and Goal podcast. My name is Lewis, and next to me, of course, is my beautiful co-host Laraib. And our predictions podcast last week, we were actually on vacation in Vegas together, getting a good look at some of the lines, seeing how wrong we've been, how wrong I've been in the past few weeks. But it was a much needed vacation business trip for my partner here. But it was a great time, but that's why we could now. And so we made these picks on our own together, but we did not show y'all. So we'll go ahead and show you the picks now. I am not a big fan of these picks. I wish I could take them back now. There's no evidence of me making these picks, but here they are. Not a great week whatsoever. Just say what you need to say.
Yeah, well, the only disappointing thing for me this week was my Seahawks. We'll talk about them in just a second, but they weren't able to get it done on the road. But, my upset, Kirk Cousins gets it done for me on the road. The Giants, I believe in them. And, you pick Dallas as your lock of the week, and it just doesn't go well for you, Lewis. And so, now I'm finally up ahead on the picks. And, I'm just continuing this hot streak for me, Lewis.
Yeah, I mean, it was just Buffalo was such a good upset, and I should have gone, or Minnesota was a really good upset pick. I just was sleeping on it too hard. The Cowboys, I thought it was a lock. I mean, the Packers lost to the freaking Lions last week and only put up 9 points against the worst defense in the NFL. So I assumed against one of the best defenses in the NFL that it should be a similar performance. But no, they dropped 31 points on this Cowboys defense. Well, we'll get into later. And in my upset, I just thought the Chargers, they were looking pretty solid, but just so many injuries to that team. And they suffered so many injuries to that defensive line last night that it was really hard to find a way to beat that team, even though I think the Chargers, they had so many opportunities, but Chargers did what Chargers do, and that's throw games away. So I should not be surprised. But this officially puts you in the lead for the picks, Laraib.
Yes,
sir. At
sir.
a total of 5, 4, and 1. I have 4, you have 5, and we tied last week. But Laraib, let's get to our good old Seattle, New Orleans corner of the podcast. We talk about our 2 favorite teams, and sometimes our favorite teams have to be our favorite team because we've supported them for so long, even though you hate that team. That's your favorite team, and that's the situation I'm in now. It was just a hard game to watch overall. And the offense was just anemic. We were just getting we get to midfield and then just stopped three and out. And it was so hard to watch. Couldn't get anything going. And the defense, I mean, this is the least explosive offense in the NFL. They won the entire season. Najee Harris by himself put up 3. They had 5 total plays of 20-plus yards with this offense, and it's just the tackling is poor, the communication is poor, the whole vibe in the building is off, and you feel bad for some of these vets who have been with the team for such a long time, like Canada guys, like Ryan Ramczyk, Alvin Kamara, who they know that this team could be successful, but we just cannot do it. Andy Dalton, he's definitely not the answer quarterback. And now there's a report that Jameis feels like he's been wronged by the organization, that he's been healthy, and they just don't want to go with him. Well, it's because you're not good. Miss in next week because we're too afraid of the consequences of what's going to happen with that, and it's not a really good future outlook. And you don't have your first round pick. This is going to be a grim couple of years for this storied franchise of my lifetime.
Yeah, and there's some injuries across the board too. Some offensive weapons, some defensive weapons. I mean, bringing guys like Tyrann Mathieu, you'd hope they'd be the answer on defense, but they just haven't been there. And then Dennis Allen, he's been with the Saints for a long time. He was a head coach for the Raiders, but we've seen how those Raiders head coaches pan out, and so I can only feel bad for you guys, and I hope you guys can make some blockbuster trade.
Dennis Allen.
Mm-hmm.
No, yeah. What I was saying is Dennis Allen, he's been such a good like person in our locker room for all these years as a defensive coordinator, working under Sean Payton, working with this leadership, and the fact that he gets elevated to head coach inept and cannot figure things out. It's it's pretty embarrassing. I mean, I don't know what the answer is. Should he get fired? Probably, just so the fans aren't breathing down his neck every week. But I don't know what the long term answer is. I think it's going to be a bleak few years until we figure out with some new blood, because the post Sean Breeze era has been a nightmare so far.
Yeah, Lewis, but flipping on over to the other side, another team who lost their franchise quarterback was just always been on the up and up, and we lost this week, but I think we were due for a game like this. Our offense to start the first half was really, really slow. Pete Carroll's really established the run this season, but in this game, we just couldn't get anything going against that Buccaneers front seven. And, in the second half, Gino really came alive. He had two really, really awesome throws to hit Tyler Lockett and Marquise Goodwin on 2 touchdown balls. But when it came down to it, it was that young defense, Lewis, who was getting exposed. Kobe Bryant for the first touchdown of the game, thought he was playing man-to-man when they were really playing zone, and they gave up a 30-yard touchdown to Julio Jones, right? When it was late in the fourth quarter with less than 3 minutes to go and the defense needed to step up to get a stop, it looked like the Buccaneers could, get a first down whenever they wanted. And so, you take these losses on the chin, and it's going to be a learning experience for everybody on the defense, right? We raved about these rookies all year long, but that's exactly what they are, Lewis. They're just rookies. And so this is experiences for them to build on, for some of the, players in the building to build on. And I personally like these type of losses, Lewis. I know no sort of loss is good for a team, but it's stuff like this that brings you right back down to earth and lets you know that, you aren't untouchable and gives you something to learn off of. And so moving forward, the 49ers play the Cardinals this week. Meanwhile, we're on bye. And so most likely when the 49ers win, both teams will be at 6-4, and the Niners will be leading the division. And so, it's going to be a tough, close race all the way to the end. But we're going to have to, have some big wins later on. We still play the Rams twice. We still play the Niners once. And so, I'm looking forward to what this team can learn off of this sort of loss, Lewis, and how we can move forward from it.
Yeah, I think that was a typical schedule loss that we call it in the NFL. It's a team that has to fly 10 hours to Germany, playing in just a completely different time zone. This is a game in which all their, internal clocks were messed up, being on the West Coast, traveling all the way to Germany. You're 10 hours behind. And, it's not that easy for Tampa either. They're only 6 hours behind, but still, that's a significant difference to where, the first half, this team just seemed so lifeless, and they picked it up in the second half, but it was all for naught as they lost. But, Laraib, as you said, I think this team has a decent chance to make it. Well, into the playoffs, I think they're definitely making it. But winning the division is not out of the question, because they still have games against the Raiders, 2 more against the Rams, and the Rams are awful right now, losing to the Cardinals. And, Cooper Kupp goes down. Matt Stafford wasn't playing. But this team is just ravaged by injuries. It just seems like this is a lost year for them. And you have another game against 2 more games against the Panthers and the Jets. So your only 2 hard, really tough games left is home for the Niners and at Kansas City in December. So we'll see how the team stacks up in those matchups. But those are going to be really fun, interesting games. So I think if this team can beat the 49ers, that is the game you need to win. They have a really good shot at winning this division. So things are looking at the up and up for your Seattle Seahawks, Laura. But let's move on to Sunday's best game, and probably the best game of the year, as the Minnesota Vikings defeat the Buffalo Bills in overtime, beating them a score of 34-31, Laura. This was just a game in which it seemed like the Bills had control all throughout. It wasn't, it was 1 p.m. Kirk Cousins, but it felt like a prime time game, and he was playing. He started to figure things out. This defense started to clamp down. Josh Allen had some really bad mistakes in this game that we'll talk about. And then it was just highlighted for the Vikings on 4th and 18. Kirk Cousins throws up a prayer on the final drive, and Justin Jefferson comes down with one of the greatest catches I've seen in my wide receiver in this league. That allows the Vikings to get all the way to the 1-yard line. They don't convert, but because they're so close, Josh Allen fumbles the snap. The Vikings recover, and they get the touchdown and go to overtime, and the Vikings win this one, Laraib. Laraib, Let's start with the Vikings win in Buffalo. Confirm that the Vikings are legit Super Bowl contenders this year.
Well, Lewis, I'm gonna have to say no. It's these back and forth games, and they had 20 different opportunities in this game to lose the game, right? It comes down to Justin Jefferson making one of the greatest catches in NFL history of all time, maybe, to put them in this game, right? It comes down to Josh Allen fumbling the snap in the end zone for them to get the touchdown and go into overtime and all the other stuff, right? So, it's these close games. It's awesome to win one of these. But with Josh Allen hurt, with the mistakes he's been making, and being down by 17 points, you can't rely on having those comebacks every single week. And that's what this team's been, Lewis. They've been living on by the skin of their teeth when they've won most of their games by one possessions, late fourth quarter comebacks, late drives, and almost all their games to win. And so you can't question, they won those games, right? But it's the way they won those games. Can you always make it out by the skin of your teeth? And we'll get to our top 5 teams. I have the Vikings in there. This is a great win for them because they proved it, right? They got it done, but just the manner where it got it done, an awesome game to witness. But just so many things had to go right for them that I can't comfortably say, that they could go into Kansas City in the playoffs and in that playoff atmosphere and win. Can they go into Buffalo in the playoff time? Not on a 1 p.m. Solar Kirk game, but a 9 o'clock game, 7 o'clock game where Solar Kirk turns into Midnight Kirk and has a couple bad interceptions. And so a great win for them. But we've always asked them all season long to prove it, and they did in this one. But I still can't trust them until we gets a little bit more evidence.
Yeah, I don't think the Vikings will be going to Kansas City or Buffalo in the playoffs. They would face those teams in the Super Bowl. So by that logic, if they face those teams, they are Super Bowl contenders. But I agree with you. This team has been winning one score game after one score game after one score game. And hey, there's something to be said about finding a way to win. And that's a really good thing to have. And it just takes a few games like this to get hot and make your way in to the big dance. And when you're there, who knows what can happen. But, this team, they have the requisite talent. I'm a little bit afraid. TJ Hawkinson seems like a really good pickup for them because Adam Thielen has not been very impressive this season. It seems like KJ Osborne as well, because of that attention towards Thielen that used to be super warranted because of his regression. That KJ Osborne has regressed as well. Dalvin Cook has been playing well, but this offense is very Justin Jefferson reliant. And if Kirk cannot get that first read, you saw he threw just a boneheaded pick in two different stances in that game. So I think this next week's game against the Cowboys is what's going to do it for me. I know, you could say last week's game should have done it, but there were so many things that the Bills did to give that game to the Vikings that it's hard to say at the Vikings are prime time. This is going to be their stage to show it. I'm going to be very interested to see what they can do there, especially after we saw what Dallas did last week, which was an absolute travesty. But moving over to the Bills side of things, Laura, another close loss for the Bills in which timely turnovers by Josh Allen keeps them out of it. We saw last week against the Jets, 2 bad interceptions in the red zone, and he just could not get out of his own way. And then this week, he fumbles the snap on basically if you can just get the snap and get over the goal line, you end the game. So because the Vikings only had 1 timeout, there's only 40 seconds left on the clock. Game would have been over if you could just get that snap right and go. He couldn't. Now, to his credit, he leads the team down the field to kick the game-tying field goal, but then throws a horrible pick in the red zone to Patrick Peterson in overtime to just lose the game for the Bills. And this is just the Josh Allen experience. He makes spectacular plays, amazing plays that just steamroll teams, and you don't know how to stop. But in this game, he also has those plays where you're scratching your head, and it just happened at the worst moment for him in this spot. So, Laraib, does this give you concerns? Because we originally we're going to go over our top 5 teams later, but we both had the Bills as our best team in the NFL. Does this concern you going forward for the rest of the season that maybe the Bills need to be
Yeah, Lewis.
Because right now, which we thought they were going to lock that division up. There you go.
Yeah, no. Yeah, so like you mentioned, they're going to lock the division up. But now, the mistakes that you've seen, just like you mentioned, they're boneheaded. They're easily fixable, right? Messing up a snap is something that happens 1 in every 100 snaps, less than 100 snaps in a game, right? And you probably won't see that for the rest of the season. You see some of those bad interceptions and you think, well, that wasn't a tight window that he's trying to throw to. That's just a bad ball thrown right to the guy. And so, I know it drives all the Bills fans crazy. I know it definitely drives their offensive coordinator crazy, just because, it's just one of those type of plays where you're thinking, what are you doing, man? Like, hold the ball. You don't need to be forcing that in there. It's OT. We can just kick the 3, right? You don't have to throw the game-losing interception there. And so it's definitely cause for concern, Lewis. We've seen the injury to his elbow. Maybe that's what's impacting him. But, if that's what's not really the big issue here, then it's just going to be the brain of Josh Allen. You just got to think to yourself, man, I don't need to be putting the ball in harm's way when I know the next play, I can probably run it for another 20 yards like I did the last 2 plays. And so it's just going to be on Josh Allen to button things up and, move forward, because now, like you mentioned, the division that you thought you had, tied up is now, now you have the Dolphins running up there. And so I still like them, Lewis. They're still in the top 5, but it's going to come down to Josh Allen. And, it's going to be this, Josh, this is what's going to take you over the hump, this Bills team, your untimely turnovers.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just think, going forward, I think this team is still top 5 team in the league. That defense is still elite. They're missing so many guys in the secondary that they're going to get back. Tre'Davious White, he's going to come back off of IR, and he's their best corner. So they're going to get better and better. And if you just don't let up that crazy 4th and 18 catch to Justin Jefferson, then we're not even talking about this situation. But that's just how the game went. Definitely one of the best games of the year. It was so exciting to watch. So it's exciting seeing these 2 great teams and the paths they're going on. Just great football in general. But what I'd like to bring up in this next segment, we've been talking about quarterback play and how important it is. I was thinking earlier about who are our bona fide franchise quarterbacks in the NFL. When I say this, Laraib, if you have this guy on your team, then there is no doubt that you are, this guy can carry you. He can bring you to the promised land. It's a little help around him. He will do what he needs to do. Now, there's guys, for example, who are franchise guys, but they need that team around him. And when that situation's around him, he can win games. If not, he's not an effective quarterback. So I tasked you with making a list. I want to hear how many guys and who they are do you consider franchise quarterbacks in the NFL, Rob?
Right. So let me start off the list. I'll just run through them very quickly for you. Josh Allen. You stop me whenever you hear something outrageous, all right? Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, Aaron Rodgers, Tom Brady, and Kyler Murray.
All right, let's stop right there. Let's stop it right there at Kyler Murray. So you were almost perfect right there, because I have seven guys: Tom Brady, Aaron Rodgers, Joe Burrow, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, Justin Herbert, and it's kind of a question mark, even though I think he has been playing outstanding this year and he is absolutely a franchise guy, but he needs a specific type of offense around him. But when you talk about Kyler, does he have the requisite talent to be a franchise quarterback? Absolutely. He is one of the most, his disposition, he is not a leader. So can you even consider him to be a franchise quarterback if he is not a leader and you just hand him on the sidelines? He's complaining. His body language is awful, and that affects how he plays and how the team plays. If you see the quarterback is the leader of the team. After he throws an interception, you want to go out there and you want to get that stop because you don't want Tom Brady to be pissed at you. Meanwhile, Kyler is just so apathetic. He could care less. And yes, he has the talent. We've seen him have the talent, but his disposition, his intangibles is what makes him not a franchise quarterback, in my opinion. But I did want to, it kind of cut out a little bit for me. Did you have anyone else besides my guys that you wanted to talk about?
Well, Lewis, I think we can agree that these are the bona fide guys, right? but I think you and I both want to bring up some question marks that we have up there. Not guys who could, 100% pencil in, but some guys, eking right on the edge of that corner. And so I'll list a couple names out there for you, and tell me what you think. So so you said, Kyler Murray is on the fringe for you. All right, I got Tua in there as well. I have Jalen Hurts in there as well, and I have Dak Prescott in there as well. I think those guys, we've seen them have some success. Tua has been balling out this year. Jalen Hurts is on, an awesome track this year. Dak Prescott, man, we'll talk about the Cowboys in a little bit and their struggles, but I want to hear what you think about, those three guys or those four guys.
Yeah, I mean, I just think, yeah, Jalen Hurts and Tua. I just think the sample size has been so small that we can't officially say they are a franchise guy as of now. I mean, they've been playing amazing this season, and they deserve their flowers for how they've been playing. But it just, we've seen 2 years of Tua before, Tyreek thought of him as a franchise quarterback. People wanted to move off of him, but he's been playing very well this season. And Jalen Hurts, he's been also playing well. But the same thing, the last 2 years, people have been wondering whether or not he's going to, still be the quarterback and whether or not they should trade for somebody else. So those are guys. And I wanted to give a shout out. I just forgot about him because of how the play has been. But I believe Matthew Stafford, when healthy, is also a franchise guy. He just hasn't been healthy this season, and the team hasn't been that great. But he's definitely a franchise quarterback, in my opinion. I also wanted to give a shout out to Justin Fields. He's been playing amazing these last few games, but their system, they just do not have that many weapons for him. But I think, next year, if they get those weapons around him, surround him with the talent that he needs, he can put up a Lamar-esque season in his third year. So this is Deshaun Watson. I know it's kind of cringy to say his name, but when he was with Houston, he was a no questions asked franchise type of talent. Now in Cleveland, with all the baggage surrounding him, will he get back to that? Would you want him as the cornerstone of your franchise? Yeah, maybe not from a moral perspective, but from a talent perspective, yeah, he can definitely fit in. So any more guys you want to shout out or react to anything I've said?
No, I definitely agree with you. And it seems we've seen this trend, Lewis, of quarterbacks in their third year. And so we'll definitely see with some of these guys like Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence, some of the guys from the draft class from last year. We'll see what they can do next year. And definitely a shout out to my boy Geno Smith, Lewis. But let's move on to another topic that we have. The Cowboys-Packers game from this past weekend, Lewis. I know you're really, really hot on this topic about the Dallas Cowboys going to Green Bay and losing. And it looks like the Packers just had the Cowboys numbers, for the past decade. And so how do you feel about this game for the Cowboys? They're coming off the bye week. They still had to go to Lambeau, but a game like this where, you're up by 2 touchdowns and you go into overtime with the Packers and you lose, how do you come back from a loss like this, Lewis?
Apparently Ezekiel Elliott is a lot more important than we figured, because I don't know how, when you're up 2 touchdowns with this running game and this defense and how they've been playing all season, and you squander that lead to a Green Bay Packers team that has looked so inept offensively these past 5 weeks, that you let them score 30 points. Yes, it's in Green Bay, but they scored 17 points against the Jets in Green Bay. There is no excuse for the defensive performance. There needs to be a serious conversation around, we love Micah Parsons. He's a great edge rusher, but why is he playing in coverage so often? He is the best edge rusher on your team. And in crucial third down situations, he's covering freaking Mercedes Lewis. Like, look at your talent and evaluate it, Dallas. And then the worst play of the game, decide to go for it when you could take a field goal and go up 3. And yes, analytics say that is the right thing to do in that moment, but you have to understand the game script at that time, that you haven't really been doing much offensively. You just need points, and you get your defense back out there. Shout out to Christian Watson. He had a really good game, coming out of nowhere, kind of living up to that draft hype beforehand, 3 touchdowns. But still, you have Trayvon Diggs. You have all these defensive players and the mismanagement of them. So I guess maybe you were confused. That's why you went for it. You don't get it on a stupid play. And my question, Laraib, is you were in 4-down territory. Why on 3rd down do you not run the ball and give yourself a better chance at a 4th and short instead of a 4th and 3, a long 3, closer to 4th and 4? What's the strategy there? It's so mind-boggling. It's like Mike McCarthy. He was back in Green like him. The things that hold this Dallas team back is Dak Prescott and Mike McCarthy. Dak had 2 really bad interceptions in that game, and there were just so many crucial 3rd downs that he could not connect on. And he's great when it's just middle of the second quarter, hitting. But when you need him most to show up, it just seems like he can't. And we saw this in the playoff game last year as well. So these are the inhibiting factors for a very talented Dallas team. And no, Green Bay, for all the Green Bay fans, I will not give you credit for that one because it was more Dallas being stupid than it was you being good. But at least we know Rodgers is still a good quarterback.
Yeah, we were, having the Packers funeral last week. But moving, going back over to the Cowboys, Lewis, this is one of the most hyped teams in the whole NFL right now, right? Everybody loves it when the Cowboys are playing well, and everybody loves to dog on them when they're doing bad. And like you mentioned, it comes down to Dak Prescott and Mike McCarthy. Mike McCarthy, we like to joke he's always on the sidelines reading the Denny's menu instead of actually looking at the play calls. And then for Dak Prescott, we say this every year, right? He always has a hot start. He's hitting his guys, and then whenever it comes down to it, he just can't get it done. And I don't know how much longer we're gonna be able to give him this excuse for, they're in Green Bay, or we're paying him this much money and all this yada yada yada. But it comes down to guys in the end of the game. Your quarterback, can he get it done? And Dak Prescott, as all the money they gave him, all the stats he's put up, it's just he hasn't been able to come up in big time moments, and that's what he's going to need to do, because now Jalen Hurts and this Eagles team are right there, right? The Giants, despite however much we don't like their roster or Daniel Jones, they're right there with them. And so this Cowboys team is starting to become quickly overrated, and how hyped those players can become, right? We know Trevon Diggs, how hyped he is. Led the league in interceptions last year. Everybody's giving him his flowers. He was playing really well this year, Lewis. But you have a game like this when you're playing against a rookie wide receiver and you're getting torched for 3 touchdowns. And so, I'll say this just like I said about my Seahawks, right? Is these type of losses that you really have to learn from, right? Your ego is down a little bit. Your plane gets landed back down on the ground. And so we'll see how they learn from this. Like you mentioned, they play the Vikings next week, and that's going to be a really big game, because as much as we like this Cowboys team, however much hype they've been, you have to prove it against these big teams in these big time games. And so we'll see how they are next week, Lewis. But for sure, this is not a good look for this Cowboys team.
No, I mean, again, like we said with the Vikings, this next game against this Minnesota Cowboys game is going to tell us a lot about both teams and how legit they're going to be this season. So I'm excited. And I just think the biggest thing they need to figure out is that rushing defense, because Aaron Jones and AJ Dillon, Aaron Rodgers went through 6 passes in the first half, and they still managed to score 14 points. How do you just not understand? And that is your biggest weakness. You bring in Hankins, and he does more harm than good in a lot of drives. So I don't know. There's a lot of things they need to figure out. But, Laraib, let's go ahead and move on to another shocking outcome from a game where you had Jeff Saturday and the Indianapolis Colts making his debut as a head coach and beating the Raiders 25-20. This seemed like a game where you bring in this first-time coach. He has no coaching experience except for on the high school level. And with all the stuff we've seen from the Colts recently going into Vegas, and yes, Vegas has not been very good this season, but they should have the talent to beat this just dilapidated Colts team. But the Colts go in there and beat them. Laraib, does this tell you more about Jeff Saturday as maybe a good head coach, or more about Josh McDaniels as being an absolute dumpster fire?
Oh, it 100% has to be on Josh McDaniels, Lewis. You talk about the offseason that this team had, bringing in guys like Devontae Adams, bringing in guys like Chandler Jones, extending guys like Waller and Max Crosby. And this is the performance you put on this season is absolutely just ridiculous, Lewis. It's it's abhorrent to watch. And I feel bad for all the Raiders fans, on our way out from the airport on Saturday from Las Vegas. I saw a bunch of Raiders fans coming in. They had all their Raiders gear on. They were all excited and happy to watch them, excited for a win this week against the Colts. And wah, wah. This is the type of performance that you can get from Josh McDaniels. And, he was going to be the coach for the Colts a few years ago, Lewis. And so, it looks like they dodged a bullet with that one. And you just have to feel bad for this Raiders team. And, we'll see what their owner does about all this. But it looks really, really bad for this Raiders team. And then, for Jeff Saturday, 2 weeks ago, he tweets from his phone on his couch, the Raiders look horrible. And he goes out there and he gets it done against this Raiders team. So just, in my opinion, worse for the Raiders.
Well, I mean, he certainly wasn't wrong in that tweet what he made, but I want to give a quick shout out to Jeff Saturday and the Colts. This was a hard situation to come in, and it seemed like there was just a different energy around this team. And this team looked so lackluster. This new spirit into the team, and you saw the post game where he was hyping everyone up. Everyone was excited to play for him. So it seems like there might be some new energy to a Colts team that's still not yet out of it in their division. So excited to see what we can see from them. Also, very questionable decision to believe when Frank Reich was coaching that Matt Ryan would be out for the rest of the season. Yet right when the game starts, it's, oh no, Matt Ryan's going to be the starting quarterback for this game, which made sense. And I tell you, the most angry person on the planet right now has to be Frank Reich, because it wasn't his decision to sit Matt Ryan. It was the ownership urging him. Is just the worst head coach or worst quarterback. And now he's probably pissed. Like, well, that's why I lost my job, because we lost 2 awful games with this bozo starting at quarterback. And now we win when we bring Matt Ryan in and everyone's giving Saturday his flowers. So a tough situation for Frank Reich. I hope he gets a job. I hope he gets a job. Moving on over to, yes, the elephant in the room is this Raiders team that we had such high expectations for. And they've had moments in this season where they've looked decent, but they just have awful losses on their schedule. Awful Saints. You blow 17-point leads against the Cardinals and against the who
Jaguars.
was it? There was another team they blew a huge lead to. The Jaguars, thank you. And then there's just like your only wins are against an awful Broncos team and against, it's just a tough game. Against the Texans. You beat the Texans. Good job. So how can you Monday and say all these things, he has our confidence. It's a rough start, but we'll get through it. Context, people, context. You can't just focus on, yes, you want to treat every season like it's a complete new individual season. But last year, you had all this adversity, all this tragedy hit the team with the head coach, getting fired, Henry Ruggs situation, and they still made it to the playoffs and were like 2 plays away from beating the eventual AFC champions in the playoffs. And then we turn around, you have these new flashy offseason additions with Devontae Adams, and you bring in Chandler Jones, and you're decidedly worse. It's such a dumpster fire. Josh McDaniels, we should have seen this coming, like with Dennis Allen. You look at his, coaching history, not very good. Josh McDaniels, not very good. These guys are coordinators. They're best at coordinating. They cannot manage personalities. They cannot manage teams. It has just been a complete mismanagement on their part. The Raiders are an unserious franchise and should be treated as such. But that's all I have to say on this dumpster fire. Rob, you got anything else?
Yeah, I will say a quick story. So while we were in Vegas, we had to take an Uber, and we were talking with the driver, and he was telling us about the nickname for the stadium that they have. The owner calls it the Death Star, Lewis. And so you know what happened to the Death Star in the Star Wars movie? It got blown up. And so, I think we'll leave it at that. But let's move on to our top 5 teams, Lewis. Now, we've been through 10 weeks in the NFL, and, we got some big losses, some big wins out of some teams. And so I want to hear your top 5 teams in the NFL right now.
So my number 1 team is Kansas City. Mm-hmm. My number 2 is Philadelphia. Mm-hmm. Number 3 is Buffalo. Buffalo moving down. based off the last 2 games, top 3 tier. I don't think it's going to change much throughout the season. Maybe the order will change based on opponents, but it's hard to intertwine those 3 teams. My number 4 is Minnesota, who jumps in, passing. I think I had San Francisco last time, and number 5 is here. But San Francisco has been looking very good recently, and I think just top end talent on that team, they deserve to be the 5th team. So yeah, I just think moving Buffalo down was the reasonable thing to do after these 2 losses. It's hard to explain them being at the top after that. I still think talent-wise they are consistent performances forward in order for me to fully believe that. And then Minnesota, they just deserve respect. They're 8-1. Has it been the prettiest 8-1? No. But after going into Buffalo and getting a win is a win at the end of the day. So they do deserve respect. That's why they're at number 4. And San Francisco, I think they are the 2nd most talented team in the league behind Buffalo. That's why, even though their record isn't that great, they're going to start stringing things together as their team is healthy now, and they're going to look really dangerous.
Yeah, I'm going to have a little bit different than you, Lewis. The top 3 are, of course, in the same order. But at the 4 spot, Lewis, I'm going to put the San Francisco 49ers, like you mentioned. Just a really good roster. They're getting some guys back. Christian McCaffrey's been awesome. They bring back Eli Mitchell, and they win a great Sunday Night Football game. But for my 5th spot, Lewis, it's going to be the Miami Dolphins. Now, we're giving Justin Jefferson his props, but as awesome he's been, Tyreek Hill has been the best offensive player in football, non-quarterback offensive player this season in the NFL. What he's done for this team, has just been outstanding. And him and Jalen Waddle have just been, tearing up the league. And so, with Tua starting and finishing a whole game, Lewis, he's undefeated. And so, this Dolphins team, they had a little, couple injuries, but they bring in guys like Bradley Chubb, and they've been balling out, and they lead their division, Lewis, at 7-3. And so I really like them at the 5th seed, at the 5th ranking for our top 5. And I'm excited to see where they can go. They're winning the division right now, and they could, potentially win their division for the rest of the season.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good pick. Dolphins are right there with the Ravens for me on the outside. You say since Tua has been back, they've been undefeated, and he's looked like a franchise quarterback, like we mentioned so far. So yes, he deserves all the flowers that's thrown towards him. And this team is dangerous. My only question is, this defense the past few weeks has looked pretty suspect, giving up 30 points to the Bears, and then the Browns just running all over them. But that's what the Browns do. So against higher level quarterbacks that you're going to face in the AFC, your Joe Burrows, your Josh Allen's, your Tua going to show that he is the caliber of quarterback to match score for score for some of these big hitters in the AFC? Or is he going to be the Tua that we've seen from the past 2 years? So it'll be exciting to find out. Maybe Tyreek Hill is just that guy. Like you mentioned, I do think he is the best offensive weapon in the NFL come playoff time when you need huge plays. So those are our top 5 teams, Laraib. Let's go ahead and look forward to Thursday Night Football.
Finally, a good one.
It's a very exciting one for a change. We have the Tennessee Titans traveling to Green Bay by 3 points. Of course they are. Green Bay, they have the magic at home, I guess, even though they've lost to the Jets at home and dropped other annoying games. To their credit, they just won a tough one, but now they have to host the Tennessee Titans, another tough defense than Dallas. So, Laraib, what is the biggest matchup in this game that you're looking forward to seeing?
Of course, Lewis, everybody's looking towards this. It's going to be Derrick Henry against that front 7 for the Green Bay Packers. Mike Vrabel, who's actually a good coach instead of the other Mike McCarthy, he's going to have a great game plan for this one, Lewis. He's not going to be looking at the IHOP, menu. He's actually been looking at the play call sheet. And so, he's going to dial up some great runs. We saw him, mix it up a little bit last week. They're lacking at wide receiver depth, Lewis, but he runs that flea flicker. Westbrook Ikine, 3 touchdowns, 2 touchdowns, over 100 receiving yards for him. Looks like he had a breakout game. Treylon Burks is back. And so, the the passing attack isn't, what it was with AJ Brown, but they've strung together some guys and, they've gotten it going a little bit, but it's going to be Derrick Henry against his front seven. And we've seen this Packers team, when they lost to the 49ers, it was that rushing attack in the playoffs last year who dominated them, right? Like you mentioned, if Zeke and Tony Pollard were both playing in that last game and they're able to just run it down their throats and milk out the clock, maybe we're talking about a different outcome for the Cowboys game. But we know what Mike Vrabel knows what this Tennessee team is. It's going to be heavy rushing and heavy play action. And I really like this Titans team on the road, Lewis. I know Vegas says Green Bay is back with their -3 line, but I still like Tennessee on the road.
I mean, these are two teams that are very close in how they play football. They both lean on the running game heavily. Their receivers are not very good, so they just use, as much trickery and every little, they squeeze every little bit out of the receivers that they can just because they don't have that much talent. So, I mean, I think this is a game where I gotta disagree with you. I just think in Green Bay, it's going to be 31 degrees. I think the
Derrick
Packers,
Henry temperature.
Aaron Jones temperature. Yes, sir. I just think this Packers defense is going to corral the Titans a lot better than the other side. The Titans are missing a lot of guys up front. And I think Rodgers figured something out with Christian Watson that maybe he can start getting that explosive passing game going that we know he is capable of. Meanwhile, the Titans have no passing game whatsoever to speak of. And against the Broncos last week, they had to pull out every trick in the book in order to beat the Broncos in Tennessee. I think the Packers are a better team. This game's in Green Bay, so I'm going with the Packers 24-20.
Well, Lewis, you can say the Packers are overall a better team, but what you can't say is that the Packers defense is better than the Broncos defense. Talk about guys like Patrick Surtain, who's just been balling out for the Broncos. I think that, Tennessee might have a little bit more success against Green Bay, even though they're on the road. And so I will be taking the Tennessee Titans. Lewis, this is going to be your opportunity to start clawing back in some of these picks, but I like the Titans 24-23 on the road.
Interesting. All right. So Ryan Tannehill wills in a close game. But, Laraib, that will do it for the episode. Excited for another great week of football, as we will talk about in our predictions episode dropping on Thursday. We will have it this Thursday. All of our socials are on the link below. And, Laraib, anything else you got for us?
No, I think this is going to be the First and Goal podcast signing off.
Peace.